Welcome to Sleepy Story Facts, and to this gentle bedtime story, this soft nighttime story, designed to help you loosen your thoughts, soften your breathing, and slowly fall asleep as the world grows quieter around you. Tonight, we begin a relaxing story about earthquakes, but not in a sharp or fearful way. Instead, we will visit them as patient facts of the living earth, as slow movements in stone, as whispers passing through deep layers far below the bed, the blanket, the room, and the peaceful darkness around you. So for now, let your body grow heavy. Let your jaw unclench. Let your shoulders sink a little farther down. Feel the support beneath you, steady and dependable, holding you without asking anything in return. In this sleep story, you do not need to memorize every detail. You do not need to stay alert for every sentence. You can simply listen to the calming narration and allow each fact to drift through your mind like a lantern floating on dark water. Earthquakes, after all, begin in silence long before they are ever felt. The planet beneath us is not rigid all the way through. Its outer shell is broken into enormous pieces called tectonic plates. And these plates move so slowly that their motion is measured in centimeters per year, about as fast as fingernails grow, which means the ground beneath cities, deserts, forests, and oceans is part of a patient journey, almost too slow for human senses to notice. Some plates move apart, some slide past one another, some press together in a long, unhurried contest of pressure and resistance. And when stress gathers in rocks for years, centuries, or even longer, it may finally release in a brief motion we call an earthquake. That release sends energy outward in waves, rather like ripples moving across a pond, except these ripples travel through stone. The first waves, called P waves, are gentle by earthquake standards and move fastest, squeezing and stretching the ground as they pass. The second set, S waves, arrive later and move with more side-to-side motion. And after them come surface waves, which often create the rolling feeling people most remember. It is strangely comforting to know that even an earthquake follows an order, a sequence, a pattern written in physics. The earth does not act randomly. It moves according to stress, rock type, fault shape, and depth, all part of a deep and ancient system. Many earthquakes happen far below the surface, sometimes only a few kilometers down, sometimes much deeper. And the deeper they begin, the more their energy is filtered by the layers above. Some are so small that only instruments notice them. In fact, the planet experiences thousands of earthquakes every day, and most are tiny, passing unnoticed beneath mountains, beneath plains, and beneath the seafloor, where no one hears them at all. Seismometers, those patient listening instruments of science, can detect motions smaller than anything our bodies can feel, translating the Earth's faint shivers into lines and patterns that researchers study with quiet care. Even the familiar word epicenter has a soothing precision to it. The focus, or hypocenter, is the place underground where the rupture begins, while the epicenter is simply the point on the surface, directly above it. And because knowledge can be restful when it is calm and practical, it helps to remember one of the gentlest safety facts of all. If shaking begins, the simplest guidance is often the best. Drop, cover, and hold on, protecting your head and neck, and staying away from windows until the movement stops. Preparation itself can be peaceful. A secured shelf, a stable lamp, a practiced plan, and a pair of shoes near the bed are all small kindnesses offered to your future self. Even buildings tell a quiet story about earthquakes. Some are designed to sway a little, not because they are weak, but because flexibility helps them absorb energy. Engineers understand that strength is not always stiffness. Sometimes the safest structure is one that can move a little and still remain standing, like a tree bending in slow wind. Beneath the oceans, earthquakes can happen where plates dive under one another in vast subduction zones. And beneath continents, they can occur along faults where rocks lock together, wait, and then slip. The famous San Andreas Fault is not a crack you could step across like a line in the pavement, but a broad system of fractures and movement. One chapter in the planet's ongoing geology. And through all of this, there is something deeply sleepy to remember. The Earth is not still, yet it is not chaotic either. It is alive with slow mechanics, with pressure and release, with deep time moving under short human days. Tonight, as you rest in this gentle bedtime rhythm, you might picture the crust not as something dangerous, but as something grand and old, floating over warmer layers below, drifting in silence through ages too wide to measure by clocks. Let that image settle softly in your mind. A room at night, a calm breath in, a longer breath out, a world of plates moving almost invisibly, waves traveling through rock, instruments listening, engineers preparing, and you here now, safe in this moment, held by the quiet poetry of science, drifting a little deeper toward deep sleep with each slow word of this bedtime story. As the patient earth turns beneath the stars and keeps its ancient, measured rhythm, as this gentle sleep story continues, you can imagine the earth below you not as a hard, finished object, but as a vast and patient surface made of pieces that drift so slowly they seem still, like sleeping ships crossing a dark and quiet sea. These pieces, the tectonic plates, carry continents and ocean floors with them. And although their movement is usually far too slow to feel in a single lifetime, it never fully stops. Some edge away from one another at spreading centers deep beneath the oceans, where new crust is slowly formed. Some press together in long zones of contact, where one plate may slide beneath another, and some move side by side, brushing past in a gradual sideways motion along faults that can remain locked for years before slipping. In the language of geology, these boundaries have names that sound almost soothing when spoken slowly: divergent, convergent, transform. Each one describes a different kind of meeting, a different relationship between the great stone rafts of the outer earth. And because tonight is a bedtime story, a nighttime story meant to help you fall asleep rather than jolt awake, you can picture these boundaries not as violent lines, but as long seams in an old and beautiful quilt, stitched through mountains, valleys, and the floor of the sea. Not every earthquake happens at a plate boundary, though many do. Sometimes old faults inside plates can awaken too, releasing stress that has quietly gathered in ancient rock. The earth remembers its older patterns. It carries old fractures the way wood carries grain. And under the right conditions, those hidden lines may move again. This is one reason earthquakes can happen in places far from the edges of the major plates. Deep time leaves traces, and the planet is full of memory. Scientists study these movements with maps, instruments, satellite measurements, and long records of where the ground has shifted before. They compare patterns, measure tiny changes, and listen for clues in the restless but lawful behavior of the crust. And still, one of the most humbling facts about earthquakes is that while science has become very good at understanding where they are likely and how they work, exact short-term prediction remains difficult. Stress builds invisibly. Faults lock in silence. Rock strength varies from place to place. So instead of offering certainty, earthquake science often offers something quieter and more useful: preparedness, resilience, and the comfort of understanding. Even the terms magnitude and intensity tell two different parts of the same story. Magnitude describes the size of the earthquake itself, the energy released at the source. Intensity describes what people feel and what effects are seen at particular places on the surface. So one earthquake can have a single magnitude, but many intensities depending on distance, ground conditions, and building design. Soft soils may shake more strongly than solid bedrock. Basins may trap and amplify motion. Hillsides may respond differently than flat plains. In this way, the ground beneath a city is not just ground. It is character, texture, and memory, all of which shape how seismic waves arrive. Then there are aftershocks, those smaller adjustments that sometimes follow a larger quake as the crust settles into a new arrangement. They are part of the same long conversation in stone, reminders that one shift can lead to several more as stress redistributes through nearby rock. And here, again, a calm safety fact can rest gently in the mind. After shaking stops, it is wise to move carefully, expect possible aftershocks, and notice your surroundings before standing or walking too quickly. Simple awareness is one of the kindest forms of preparation. In earthquake-prone regions, people often keep a flashlight nearby, secure tall furniture to walls, and store water or a small emergency kit in an easy-to-reach place. None of this needs to feel alarming. It can feel like smoothing a blanket before sleep, a quiet act of order in a world that is always moving a little. There is something deeply peaceful in knowing that humans have learned to listen to the earth this way. Seismic stations stand watch day and night. Engineers design joints, braces, and flexible systems into buildings and bridges. Teachers practice drills. Families make plans. Knowledge becomes a form of softness. It turns uncertainty into rhythm, and rhythm into rest. So now, as this relaxing story drifts onward, picture the plates again beneath the continents and oceans, moving in slow darkness, carrying mountains upward grain by grain, opening seafloors, lifting islands, shaping trenches, and storing stories in stone. Picture faults resting like folded lines in old fabric. Picture waves traveling outward through the planet when rock finally gives way. And picture yourself above all of it, safe in your room, listening not for danger, but for pattern, for science, for the quiet wonder that the ground under every ordinary day is part of a grand and ancient dance. Let that thought settle over you like a heavy, comforting quilt. Let the words become softer at the edges. Let the facts loosen into images, slow ships of stone, seamlines of mountains, deep waves in sleeping rock, and with each calm breath, let the earth below become less a source of worry and more a vast, patient presence, carrying you gently toward deeper rest, deeper stillness, and a little farther into sleep in the same slow and soothing spirit as the sample's bedtime welcome. We continue this gentle sleep story by listening a little more closely to the quiet language of waves moving through the earth far below the floorboards of houses, below roads and tree roots, and the deep sleeping foundations of cities. An earthquake begins when rock that has held its tension for a very long time finally shifts, and that motion sends energy outward in all directions, not unlike the widening circles that spread across still water after a pebble slips beneath the surface. Yet inside the planet, these circles are made of pressure, motion, and stone. The fastest of these are called P waves, and they travel with a patient, efficient purpose, pushing and pulling the ground in the same direction they move, gently squeezing and releasing the material they pass through. Because they can move through both solids and liquids, they travel through many different parts of the earth, and they are often the first signal that sensitive instruments detect. After them come S waves, which move more slowly and sway the ground from side to side or up and down, creating a different kind of motion, one that cannot pass through liquid layers. A small and elegant clue that helped scientists learn something profound about the hidden structure of the planet. Then, near the surface, come the waves many people feel most clearly, the surface waves, which can roll and sway with a motion that sometimes feels almost oceanic, as though the land itself has become a slow and heavy sea. There is something unexpectedly calming in knowing that even a trembling planet follows patterns, that the earth has its own sequence, its own order, its own way of speaking through movement. Scientists who study earthquakes have learned to read this language through seismographs, instruments so sensitive they can record distant shaking from thousands of kilometers away, tracing the arrival of each wave as a line on a page or a pulse in a digital record. Those lines may look simple at first glance, but to trained eye, they hold a whole story. When the rupture began, how far away it was, how large it may have been, and even something about the rocks the waves passed through on their long underground journey. In a way, a seismograph is like a bedside listener for the whole planet, quietly noting every murmur, every shiver, every subtle movement in the crust. And most of those movements are so small that no one feels them at all. The earth is full of tiny earthquakes, soft adjustments that pass unnoticed, except by the instruments designed to hear them. Little reminders that the ground is never perfectly still, only usually calm enough that its motions blend into the background of life. This is part of what makes earthquake science feel so vast and humbling. The planet is always moving a little, always adjusting, always releasing pressure in ways both large and small, while we walk across its surface carrying groceries, making tea, folding blankets, and settling into bed beneath the same patient crust. Sometimes the kindest fact is also the most practical one. And in this relaxing story, it helps to remember that safe habits do not need to feel tense or dramatic. They can be simple, quiet rituals if shaking ever begins indoors. Staying inside, dropping low, covering your head and neck, and holding on beneath a sturdy piece of furniture is usually safer than trying to run. If you are outside, moving away from buildings, trees, and power lines into a clearer open space is often wise. If you are in bed, staying there and protecting your head with a pillow can be the gentlest choice of all. These are calm actions, not hurried ones, and knowing them can settle the mind rather than disturb it. Across the world, engineers and planners think about these facts every day. They study how different soils respond to waves, how bridges flex, how walls crack, how foundations carry motion, and how buildings can be made not simply rigid, but resilient. A building that bends a little is not failing. Sometimes it is doing exactly what it was designed to do, moving with the energy instead of resisting every fraction of it. There is a deep softness in that idea. Flexibility can be a kind of strength. Yielding a little can be part of staying whole. And perhaps that is one reason earthquake science feels strangely suited to a bedtime story, because it reminds us that the world is dynamic without being reckless, active without being hurried, powerful without being cruel. So now, as the night grows quieter and your thoughts become looser at the edges, imagine those waves again, moving outward through the dark body of the earth. First the quick and gentle P waves, then the swaying S waves, and finally the rolling surface waves that brush the skin of the world. Imagine instruments listening in quiet stations on mountains, in deserts, near coasts, and across continents. Imagine the planet not as something unpredictable and sharp, but as something ancient, layered, and knowable in pieces. A deep stone body breathing through pressure and release across immense stretches of time. Let that image settle over you. Let it soften the mind. Let the science become a blanket rather than a burden. And as this bedtime story continues, you can rest here for a while, floating between waking and sleep, while far below, the earth keeps speaking in its slow and measured way, wave after wave, in the dark. Now, as this gentle bedtime story continues, you can let your breathing grow even slower and imagine the earth not as a flat map or a globe on a shelf, but as a living, layered home whose outer pieces meet each other along long and patient boundaries, some of which form a vast horseshoe-shaped region around the Pacific Ocean, known as the Ring of Fire. The name sounds bright and dramatic, yet in the quiet language of geology, it simply describes a wide zone where many tectonic plates meet, slide, sink, and slowly reshape the crust over immense spans of time. Around these ocean margins, one plate often bends and descends beneath another in a process called subduction. And this slow downward journey creates deep ocean trenches, volcanic arcs, and many of the world's earthquakes. It happens so gradually that if you could watch it with your own eyes, year by year, it would seem almost motionless, more like a curtain settling than a collision. But over decades, centuries, and longer stretches still, pressure builds where rocks press together and resist movement. And when that resistance finally gives way, the stored energy travels outward through the earth in waves. Some of the largest earthquakes ever recorded have come from subduction zones, where plate boundaries can extend for hundreds of kilometers, releasing enormous energy as the crust adjusts to a new position. Yet even here, there is an underlying stillness in the science. Nothing happens outside the laws of physics. Rocks bend slightly, faults lock, stress accumulates, then movement begins, far beneath the listener's quiet room. The same planet that supports beds, blankets, lamplight, windows, and sleeping streets is also carrying trenches miles deep, ridges rising from the seafloor, and mountain chains lifted grain by these ancient plate motions. Some earthquakes begin quite close to the surface, where the rupture is shallow, and the shaking may feel sharper nearby. Others begin much deeper, within descending slabs of crust, sometimes hundreds of kilometers down, where old oceanic plate material continues its descent into the hotter interior. These are called deep focus earthquakes, and although they may be felt across broad regions, they also remind us that the Earth is thicker, more layered, and more dynamic than daily life often suggests. The world beneath our feet is not a thin stage set. It is a deep structure of crust, mantle, core, pressure, heat, and time. Science has learned this not by digging all the way down, but by listening, by studying how seismic waves change speed, bend, reflect, and disappear as they travel through the hidden interior. In a beautiful way, much of what we know about the planet has come from patient listening. Seismologists notice that waves do not pass through every layer in the same way. P waves can move through solids and liquids, while S waves cannot move through liquids at all. And from these patterns, scientists discovered that Earth's outer core is liquid, so even an earthquake, gentle enough to be turned into a soothing nighttime story, becomes part of a larger gift of knowledge. Each tremor teaches something. Each wave carries news from places human hands will never reach, and because rest often comes more easily when the mind is given both wonder and reassurance, it helps to remember that earthquake safety is often about simple choices made in calm moments long before any shaking begins. Keeping heavier objects on lower shelves, fastening tall bookcases to walls, knowing where to take cover, and having a small emergency kit with water, light, and a few basics can transform uncertainty into quiet readiness. Some regions also use earthquake early warning systems, which do not predict quakes days in advance, but can sometimes detect the fastest waves and send alerts a few seconds before stronger shaking arrives farther away. A few seconds may sound small, but even that brief pause can allow trains to slow, surgeons to pause delicate procedures, doors to open at fire stations, and people to move away from immediate hazards. It is a gentle reminder that bedtime itself can stretch when knowledge is put to use. As you lie there listening, you might picture coastal mountains rising above subduction zones, islands resting over hidden plate boundaries, and the ocean floor descending in slow darkness beneath another slab of crust. All of it moving at a pace too patient for panic. You might imagine the whole planet as a great breathing body of stone, adjusting, shifting, cooling, recycling its crust, carrying continents across the ages, while human lives flicker warmly on the surface in houses and apartments, in villages, in cities, in rooms like this one, where a listener settles deeper into comfort. And perhaps that is one of the most relaxing facts of all. Earthquakes belong to a system far older than fear, a system of movement and release that has shaped the world's mountains, basins, coastlines, and islands for hundreds of millions of years. The same forces that can shake the ground have also built landscapes of extraordinary beauty. So for now, let the words soften. Let the ring of fire become not a harsh line, but a broad, sleeping arc around a dark ocean. Let subduction feel like a long downward bow, not a blow. Let the waves pass gently through your imagination. Let the science become spacious and slow. And as this calming narration drifts onward, you can remain here above the ancient crust, safe in the present moment, while the deeper earth continues its quiet work below, patiently, lawfully, and far beyond the reach of hurry. As this sleep story drifts onward, and the room around you grows softer and dimmer, you can imagine the earth below, not as a solid block of unchanging stone, but as a patient surface crossed by old seams called faults, places where rock on one side may slowly move in relation to rock on the other, sometimes by only the tiniest amount across long stretches of time, sometimes in a sudden release that becomes an earthquake. A fault is not always a dramatic open crack in the ground. More often it is a zone, a surface, or a family of fractures hidden within soil, sediment, hills, valleys, and deep bedrock. Quiet for years, even centuries, before shifting again. Some faults are normal faults, where one block of crust moves downward relative to another as the land is pulled apart. Some are reverse or thrust faults, where one block is pushed upward as the crust is compressed, and some are strike-slip faults, where blocks slide past each other sideways, almost like two calm hands brushing in opposite directions across a table. These names may sound technical at first, but they are simply different ways the earth makes room for pressure, different postures in the slow body language of geology. Along a locked fault, stress builds little by little as plate motion continues, but friction holds the rocks in place. The surface may seem perfectly still. A field may bloom with grass. A city may hum through ordinary days. Rain may fall. Windows may glow. Kettles may boil. And no one looking down at the pavement would guess how much silent pressure can gather beneath the familiar ground. Then, when the rock strength is finally exceeded, the fault slips, and the energy stored over years is released in seconds. This release is what we call elastic rebound, a phrase that carries a strange softness in it, because it suggests that even stone can bend a little store strain and then return return toward a more relaxed state. In this sense, an earthquake is not the earth becoming wild. It is the earth letting go. Scientists have learned much about faults by mapping landscapes, measuring offsets where streams or roads have been slowly displaced, and reading the records left behind in layers of sediment. In some places, they dig narrow trenches across active faults and study the buried layers inside, where old ruptures are preserved like pages in a book. Each broken layer, each shifted band of soil, each buried surface tells part of a longer bedtime story written not in ink, but in earth tones and deep time. This work is called paleoseismology, and it allows researchers to look gently backward, beyond instruments and written history, into older sequences of earthquakes that happened long before modern cities stood nearby. It is comforting in its own way to know that the land remembers. Rivers may change course, hills may lift, and sediments may settle quietly over past ruptures, but the record often remains for careful eyes. There are also faults that creep, moving so slowly and steadily that part of the stress is released without a large earthquake. In such places, walls may slowly crack, curbs may shift, and fences may ease out of line over the years, all because the ground is moving at a nearly invisible pace. Fault creep does not remove all danger, and it does not happen everywhere, but it is another reminder that the earth has many ways of adjusting, not just one. Some faults release pressure in silence, some in swarms of small tremors, some in larger events separated by long, quiet intervals. The crust is not uniform, and its behavior changes from place to place, depending on rock type, water, temperature, depth, and the long memory of older stresses. Even water deep underground can play a role, changing pressures in pore spaces between grains, and sometimes making faults more or less likely to slip. The deeper you look, the more the earth becomes not simpler, but more layered, more nuanced, more softly intricate. And still, for all this complexity, the most grounding safety facts remain beautifully simple. In earthquake country, it helps to know which objects around you are heavy, tall, breakable, or likely to move. It helps to secure shelves, to avoid hanging heavy things above a bed, to keep a flashlight nearby, and to have a calm family plan for where to meet and how to check in after shaking ends. These are not anxious acts. They are gentle bedtime kindnesses extended forward in time. They say to the future, if the ground ever stirs, I have already made this space a little safer, a little steadier, a little more forgiving. And as you continue to listen to this relaxing story, perhaps already moving closer to deep sleep, you can picture faults not as threats waiting in darkness, but as slow boundaries of pressure and release, old lines in old stone, part of the same living planet that lifts mountains, shapes valleys, and carries continents across ages too vast to hold in one waking mind. Let the words flow over you now like soft sediment settling in still water. Let the names of the faults drift past without effort. Normal, reverse, thrust, strike slip. Let the science become rhythm. Let the rhythm become rest. And far below the quiet room, the deep earth continues its patient work, holding, bending, remembering, and now and then, in its own ancient time, letting go as this gentle bedtime story continues, and the night becomes even quieter around you. You can imagine the floor of the ocean far beyond the reach of lamplight and windows, far beyond streets and rooftops, and the soft, familiar edges of home, where the seafloor lies in darkness and patience, shaped by the same tectonic forces that guide the continents above. Beneath those deep waters, the earth continues its slow work without hurry, and sometimes an earthquake begins there, not beneath a city or a valley, but under miles of sea, along subduction zones, fracture systems, and other hidden boundaries, where rock has been holding stress in silence for years. Most undersea earthquakes pass with little notice beyond instruments and scientific records, but some move the seafloor enough to displace the water above it. And when that happens, a tsunami can begin. The word itself often carries too much sharpness in the mind, so tonight it may help to picture it in its scientific form as a long wave created by a sudden movement of water, not a breaking wall at first, but a broad pulse traveling outward across the ocean with immense length between crests, sometimes hundreds of kilometers from one rise to the next. In the deep ocean, such a wave may pass beneath ships almost unnoticed. Because its height, there can be small even while its energy is vast. Only as it reaches shallower coastal water does it begin to slow, shorten, and rise, gathering into something more visible near shore. There's a quiet lesson in this, one that belongs beautifully in a sleep story. Not everything powerful appears dramatic at the beginning. Sometimes nature moves with a hidden grace, carrying its energy low and wide across great distances before revealing more of its shape. Scientists study tsunamis with deep ocean sensors, coastal tide gauges, seismic data, and models that estimate how water may move after undersea earthquakes, landslides, or volcanic events. These systems form a kind of watchfulness spread across the seas, patient networks of listening and measuring, all designed to turn understanding into warning. And because gentle knowledge can help a resting mind feel steadier, one of the calmest safety facts is also one of the clearest. If you are near a coast and experience strong or long earthquake shaking, or if the sea suddenly draws back in an unusual way, it is wise to move promptly to higher ground or inland and wait for official guidance before returning. This is not a frantic instruction. It is a simple path toward safety, one based on the plain and ancient relationship between land, water, and time. Many coastal communities practice evacuation routes for this very reason, using maps, signs, and drills, so that if needed, the body already knows the direction to go. Preparation turns the unknown into something more familiar, and familiarity is often the first step toward calm. Not all tsunamis are large, and not every undersea earthquake creates one, because the details matter. The earthquake's depth, its size, the way the fault moved, the amount of vertical displacement, and the shape of the seafloor all influence what follows. A strike-slip fault, with mostly sideways motion, may create little vertical water displacement, while a large thrust earthquake in a subduction zone may lift or drop the seabed enough to send long waves racing across an entire ocean basin. Here again, the Earth shows its preference for pattern over randomness. Each effect has causes, conditions, geometry, and sequence. Even the motion of a tsunami is shaped by the contours of the ocean floor, the narrowing of bays, and the form of coastlines, so that one harbor may experience stronger surges than another nearby. The sea has memory too, in a sense, because its shape helps guide what incoming energy becomes. And yet, the story of the seafloor is not only about rare moments of disturbance. It is also about constant, sleepy construction. Mid-ocean ridges slowly create new crust. Sediments drift downward like quiet snowfall through dark water. Old seafloor cools and sinks. Subduction returns oceanic plates into the deeper earth. The whole system moves like an endless breathing, opening here, descending there, carrying heat outward and crust inward in a cycle so slow it feels almost like thought rather than motion. If you picture this now, let it be peaceful. Long ridges hidden in black-blue depths, trenches curving like dark silk across the globe, faults beneath the water, moving in rhythms too broad for any single night to hold. Above them, the oceans rest and roll under moonlight. Below them, the rock continues its ancient conversation of pressure and release. And you, here in this quiet room, do not need to carry all of it with alertness. You can simply let the facts float by. Undersea earthquakes, long waves, listening buoys, coastal hills, warning systems, maps, and practiced paths. The earth below the sea is not separate from the earth below your bed. It is the same planet, layered and patient, moving at many speeds at once. So as this relaxing story softens further, and the words grow slower at the edges, let yourself drift with that image of the deep seafloor, breathing in long arcs beneath the water, while the surface world above remains still enough for sleep, and the night carries you quietly onward toward deeper rest. As this gentle sleep story continues, and the room around you settles into deeper stillness, you can picture a sleeping city at night, its windows darkening one by one, its streets growing quieter, its buildings resting under the soft weight of the hours. And beneath all of it, the earth remains patient and alive, holding the same slow tectonic story we have been following together. Yet one of the most comforting earthquake facts is that human beings have not simply stood still before this moving planet. They have listened, learned, adapted, and found ways to build with more grace. Engineers know that when seismic waves travel through the ground, they do not affect every structure in the same way. A small house, a tall tower, a bridge, and a low stone wall each respond according to their shape, weight, materials, and the way they are connected to the earth below. Some structures are strong because they are light. Some are strong because they are flexible. Some are strong because they are carefully braced, anchored, or allowed to move just enough to absorb the shaking without breaking apart. There's something deeply restful in that idea, that safety is not always about resisting all motion, but about understanding motion well enough to move with it. In some earthquake-prone places, buildings are designed with special frames that bend slightly, base isolation systems that help separate a structure from the strongest ground motion, or dampers that reduce swaying by absorbing energy as it travels upward. These ideas may sound advanced, but at heart, they follow a very gentle principle. When the earth speaks in waves, a well-designed structure listens and responds instead of trying to remain perfectly rigid. Even older buildings can sometimes be improved through retrofitting, which may include strengthening walls, securing foundations, reinforcing joints, or fastening roofs and floors more firmly together so the whole structure behaves as a calmer, more unified body. In this way, a building can be taught slowly and thoughtfully how to endure. The ground itself matters too. Soft sediments can amplify shaking more than solid bedrock, which means two neighborhoods in the same city may experience the same earthquake quite differently. One may feel a deeper rolling motion, another a shorter, sharper tremble, simply because of the hidden character of the soil beneath the streets. This is why geologists and planners study local ground conditions so carefully, creating hazard maps that help guide safer design, better land use, and wiser preparation. The city above may seem made only of glass, steel, wood, and concrete, but its deeper story is written in gravel, clay, sand, and ancient buried layers laid down long before any road or building existed. In some places, engineers must also think about liquefaction, a curious and important process in which water-saturated loose sediments can temporarily lose strength during shaking, behaving less like firm ground and more like a soft, unsettled mixture. Even this, though, belongs to the calm logic of science. Under certain conditions, grains are jostled, water pressure rises, and the ground changes character for a little while. It is not mystery, only mechanics, and once again, understanding becomes a form of comfort. Where the risk is known, foundations can be adapted, soils can be improved, and choices can be made with a quieter, wiser respect for place. Inside homes, apartments, and workplaces, safety can be shaped by many small and peaceful decisions. A tall bookshelf anchored to a wall, a cabinet latch that keeps glass from spilling outward, a heavy frame moved away from a bed, a flashlight placed in an easy-to-reach drawer, a pair of sturdy shoes beside the bed for dark, uncertain moments after shaking has passed. These are not dramatic acts, they are soft acts of foresight, the domestic version of engineering, the bedtime version of resilience. They say that care can live in ordinary objects. They say that preparation can be gentle. Schools, hospitals, bridges, tunnels, and train lines are all part of this learning as well. In regions where earthquakes are part of life, drills and design standards help communities respond with steadier hands and clearer minds. And perhaps that is one of the most calming truths of all. Knowledge does not erase the Earth's motion, but it can transform how we live with it. It can make streets safer, homes steadier, and choices wiser. So now, as this nighttime story softens around you, imagine a city not as something fragile perched nervously on restless ground, but as something learning, adapting, and quietly improving year by year. Imagine towers that know how to sway, bridges that are built to flex, homes made safer by simple acts of care, and sleeping neighborhoods resting above layers of soil that scientists have studied with patience. Let that image become peaceful in your mind. A city breathing slowly in the dark, foundations settled, walls quiet, lamps still. Beneath it all, the earth continues its ancient motion, and above it, human hands continue to learn how to live wisely on a moving world. Let that thought carry you farther into deep sleep now, where understanding grows soft at the edges, and the science becomes as gentle as rain on a distant roof. As this gentle bedtime story continues, and the night settles more deeply around you, you can imagine that somewhere beyond the room, beyond the sleeping buildings and darkened streets, there are quiet instruments listening to the earth with extraordinary patience, listening not with ears, but with delicate parts that can notice motions too small for any resting body to feel. And there is something wonderfully calming in knowing that our moving planet is being heard so carefully. A seismometer at its heart is a simple and elegant idea. When the ground moves, part of the instrument moves with it, while another part resists that motion for a moment because of inertia. And the difference between those two motions can be measured and recorded. From this quiet principle comes a whole world of understanding. Tiny shivers in distant rock, waves from earthquakes across oceans, even faint vibrations from landslides or volcanoes can leave their trace as gentle lines and patterns. Long ago, these patterns were drawn on rotating drums, inked in wavering marks that looked almost like a sleeping pulse. Today, many are digital, but the spirit is the same. The earth moves, the instrument notices, and science receives another whisper from the deep. When several seismic stations detect the same earthquake, researchers can compare the arrival times of the waves, especially the first P waves and the later S waves. And from those differences, they can work out where the earthquake began. It is a little like locating a sound in the dark by noticing when it reaches different windows of a house. Except here the house is a continent. The sound is a pulse through stone, and the windows are instruments waiting in silence. The more stations that listen, the clearer the picture becomes. Magnitude can be estimated, depth can be refined, maps can be updated, patterns can be noticed, and slowly, over years of listening, a region begins to reveal its habits, its hidden stresses, its quieter faults, its deeper rhythms. Some places experience many small earthquakes that never grow into anything larger. Some places remain silent for long intervals, storing stress in ways that scientists continue to study with great care. This is one of the soft truths of earthquake science. Listening does not always give perfect prediction, but it gives context, and context is a kind of comfort. It tells us that the earth is not acting without pattern. It tells us that every tremor belongs to a larger conversation. In some parts of the world, this listening has led to earthquake early warning systems, which work by detecting the first, faster waves near the source and sending alerts outward before the stronger shaking reaches places farther away. The warning may be only a few seconds, or sometimes a little longer, but even those small intervals can be meaningful. A train can slow, a surgeon can pause, a classroom can take cover, a person can move away from glass or steady themselves beside a safer spot. What matters is not speed alone, but sequence. Because P waves often arrive first and stronger shaking may follow after, the Earth sometimes offers a tiny gap between signal and impact, and human ingenuity has learned to use that gap gently. This is not prediction in the far-off sense of naming the exact day or hour before an earthquake begins. It is something quieter and more immediate, a practical act of listening in real time. And for a bedtime story, there is something deeply soothing in that image. An entire network of instruments keeping watch while people sleep, while cities breathe softly in the dark, while rain taps at windows and oceans roll against distant shores. The listening goes on whether we think about it or not. Beyond seismometers, scientists also use satellites, GPS stations, and careful field surveys to measure how the ground shifts over time. Some movements are almost unbelievably small, only millimeters or centimeters. But over months and years, they reveal the drifting of plates, the creeping of faults, and the slow bending of crust before or after larger events. It is humbling to realize that landscapes, which appear steady and finished, are often still in motion, still adjusting, still carrying the memory of deeper forces below. And yet, this does not have to feel unsettling. It can feel tender. The earth is not broken because it moves. Movement is one of the ways it remains alive. Even after an earthquake, scientists continue listening through aftershocks, which help them understand how stress has been redistributed and how the fault continues to settle. These smaller events are like the fading echoes after a heavy object is set down. Little reminders that the crust is finding a new balance. For ordinary people, one of the gentlest safety facts remains simple and steady. If you ever receive an alert or feel shaking begin, move to the action you already know rather than spending precious moments deciding. Because practiced calm is often the safest calm of all. Preparation does not need to be loud to be powerful. It can be as quiet as reviewing a plan, as simple as knowing the safer spots in a room, as ordinary as keeping a light and shoes nearby. So now, as this relaxing story softens further, and your thoughts begin to drift like slow clouds across a dark sky, imagine these listening instruments again, scattered across mountains, coastlines, plains, and valleys, each one awake in its own quiet way, each one attending to the patient motions of the earth. Let that image settle the mind. Let the science become a kind of night watch. Let the recordings become soft lines in the dark. And while the planet continues its ancient conversation below, you can rest above it, held by blankets, by knowledge, and by the reassuring thought that even the smallest tremor can become part of a larger understanding, gently carried into the stillness of the night. As this gentle sleep story continues, and the night grows even softer around you, you can imagine the earth not as a place of sudden interruptions, but as a world of long sequences, where even an earthquake is often part of a larger pattern, with small motions before it, smaller adjustments after it, and a deep quiet in between. Sometimes, before a larger earthquake, there are smaller ones in the same area, little tremors that may later be called foreshocks, though that name can only truly be given after the larger event has happened, which makes them feel almost philosophical in their nature, because the earth does not label them in advance, it simply moves. A small earthquake is just a small earthquake until later events place it in context. And after a larger rupture, there are often aftershocks, those softer, lingering echoes in the crust as the rocks continue settling into a new arrangement. These can happen for days, weeks, months, or even longer, depending on the size of the main event and the complexity of the fault zone. And while they are usually smaller than the main shock, they are part of the same patient process of adjustment. There is something unexpectedly calming in that idea that the earth, like many living systems, often needs a little time to settle after a major release of pressure. It does not always stop all at once. It exhales in stages. Scientists study these sequences carefully, mapping where aftershocks cluster, how their frequency changes with time, and what they reveal about the stress that has shifted through nearby rock. In many cases, aftershocks are most common soon after the main event, and then gradually become less frequent. A fading pattern not unlike ripples spreading across a pond and slowly growing weaker as the surface returns to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but structure. The crustwing weaker as the surface returns to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but strews rock around them, and the earth adjusts through many small conversations beneath the surface. There are also earthquake swarms, clusters of tremors that happen in one area over a period of time, without one single event clearly standing above the others as the main shock. These swarms can occur near volcanic areas, geothermal regions, or active fault systems, and they remind us that the earth has many ways of releasing tension. Not every place follows the same script. Some regions murmur in frequent small motions, while others remain quiet for long stretches, storing energy in silence. This is one of the reasons earthquake science is both careful and humble. Patterns exist, but each place has its own geology, its own rhythms, its own style of movement written in the character of the rock below. And because this is a calming bedtime story, it may help to remember that practical safety after an earthquake is often slow and simple rather than dramatic. If shaking stops, it is wise to pause, breathe, look around carefully, and stay ready for aftershocks. In a dark room, shoes beside the bed can protect your feet from broken glass. A flashlight close at hand can turn confusion into orientation. Knowing where the exits are, where the safer open spaces are, and how to check on loved ones without rustling weaker as the surface returns to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but struckness. Even this is not randomness, but structures is not randomness, but struckven this is not randomness, but strucks is not randomness, but struckway earthquake weaker as the surface returns to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but struck thighs is not randomness, but struces is not randomness, but struck is not randomness, but struckemness, but struck this is not randomness, but struckemness, but struck in this is not randomness, but struck thighs is not randomness, but struck returns to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but but struck thighs is not randomness, but structumness, but struckleness. Even this is not randomness, but strucurfis returns to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but struck is not randomness, but struck surface returns to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but strucis not randomness, but struces. Even this is not randomness, but struco stillness. Even this is not randomness, but strucelness. Even this is not randomness, but strusa turns to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but strucis is not randomness, but struckness. Even this is not randomness, but struckumness, but struck turns to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but struckquing weaker as the surface returns to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but strucks, but struck returns to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but strucelness. Even this is not randomness, but strucis momoing weaker as the surface returns to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but strucis is not randomness, but struck thighs is not randomness, but struches is not randomness, but structalness. Even this is not randomness, but struces, but struckleness. Even this is not randomness, but strucis not randomness, but struck weaker as the surface returns to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but struckumness, but strucis is not randomness, but strucase returns to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but struce to hold tightly to any sewing weaker as the surface returns to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but strucks is not randomness, but strucase returns to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but struches is not randomness, but strucelness. Even this is not randomness, but struche is not randomness, but strucks, but struck is not randomness, but strucis not randomness, but struces, but struchen active sea wing weaker as the surface returns to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but struckens to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but strucks to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but strucat the surface wing weaker as the surface returns to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but struck stillness. Even this is not randomness, but strucks to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but strucks, but strucks. Even this is not randomness, but struck to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but strucks returns to stillness. Even this is not randomness, but strucelness. Even this is not randomness, but struck. As this gentle bedtime story continues, and the night becomes softer still, you can imagine that the mountains of the world, which often seem so permanent and still in moonlight or memory, are not truly fixed at all, but are part of the same slow and graceful earth story that gives rise to earthquakes. Because many mountain ranges were lifted by plates pressing together over vast ages, fold by fold, fault by fault, until stone that once lay lower was gradually raised toward the sky. In this sleep story, you do not need to picture anything sudden or frightening. You can imagine instead a patient upward motion so slow that a human life would barely notice it. A quiet thickening of the crust as immense slabs of the earth lean into one another with the kind of pressure that belongs not to minutes or days, but to deep time. When plates converge, rocks may crumple, layers may bend, and great thrust faults may carry one section of crust over another, building high landscapes grain by grain. Some of the world's most dramatic ranges were shaped this way, and even now certain mountains are still changing, still adjusting, still rising in places, while erosion gently wears them down in others, like a long balance between lifting and smoothing. Earthquakes are one of the ways that this hidden work becomes briefly visible to science, because they can mark the moments when stress stored in compressed rock is released, and the crust shifts a little closer to its next resting shape. There is something deeply calming in this idea that a mountain is not just a pile of stone, but a memory of motion, a record of pressure, a monument built by the Earth's own slow hands. If you have ever looked at a ridgeline fading into evening light, or imagined snowy peaks resting under stars, you are looking at the visible edge of a geologic process that may still be unfolding beneath the quiet surface. Even valleys, basins, and plateaus often carry the signature of old faults and long uplift, though they appear peaceful enough to hold forests, villages, roads, and sleeping animals without ever revealing the deeper forces beneath. Scientists can measure some of this motion with remarkable patience, noticing that certain landscapes move by only tiny amounts over time, perhaps a few millimeters or centimeters in a year. And yet, across centuries, those small motions add up. Just as a bedtime story is built from one soft sentence after another, until it becomes a whole nighttime story that carries you toward deep sleep. In some mountain belts, earthquakes happen along thrust faults where one block is pushed over another. In others, the crust stretches after being thickened, creating normal faults and long basins between uplifted ranges. The Earth does not build every landscape in the same way. Some mountains rise where plates collide directly. Others form where old crust is broken, tilted, heated, or reshaped by forces working over many chapters of geologic history. But in every case, the deeper lesson remains wonderfully steady. The ground beneath us has a history, and earthquakes are part of that history, not interruptions from outside it. They belong to the architecture of the planet, and because this relaxing story is also meant to be kind and practical, it helps to remember that mountain regions and hilly landscapes can have their own safety considerations after shaking, including the possibility of loose rocks, small landslides, or unstable slopes, which means that awareness of surroundings is often one of the gentlest forms of care. If the Earth has moved, it is wise to move thoughtfully too, noticing cliffs, steep roads, bridge approaches, and anything above that may have shifted. Calm attention is a form of steadiness. The same is true indoors, where a simple practiced response still matters no matter what landscape lies outside. Drop, cover, and hold on. Then pause after the shaking stops and look around with patient eyes. There is no need for hurried imagination here. Only the soft comfort of knowing that understanding the Earth helps us live more gently within it. So now, as this calming narration continues, you might picture a long mountain chain at night, ridges layered like folded blankets beneath a dim sky, each ridge representing ancient pressure, ancient uplift, ancient release. Beneath those dark sleeping slopes, faults rest in stone, some quiet now, some still storing stress, some having moved many times across ages no human could fully count. Above them, wind crosses grass, snow settles on peaks, rivers continue their quiet work of carving valleys, and somewhere a listener lies still, warm and safe, hearing that even the highest landscapes are part of the same patient planetary rhythm we have followed from plate boundaries to seismic waves, from cities and seafloors to aftershocks and faults. Let that rhythm become drowsy now. Let the mountains rise more slowly in your mind until they are almost motionless. Let the pressure soften into distance. Let the earth feel vast, ancient, and lawful beneath you. And as this gentle bedtime chapter comes to rest, you can drift a little deeper, held by the soothing truth that even mountains are made not all at once, but gradually, quietly, through countless small acts of motion in the dark. As this gentle bedtime story continues and the night grows quieter still, you can let your thoughts settle on one of the most comforting truths in all of earthquake science, which is that calm preparation is not a sign of fear, but a form of kindness, a way of smoothing the edges of tomorrow before tomorrow even arrives. The earth beneath us may shift now and then, slowly storing pressure in rock and releasing it in waves. Yet, the human response to that ancient movement can be wonderfully soft, thoughtful, and steady. A person can prepare for earthquakes in the same way they prepare a room for rest, by noticing what is loose, what is heavy, what could fall, what could help, and what would make the night gentler if the ground ever moved. A shelf can be anchored, a lamp can be placed where it will not topple easily. A glass frame can be moved away from the bed. A flashlight can be set in an easy-to-reach place. A pair of sturdy shoes can wait quietly nearby. A little water, a list of important contacts, a charged phone, and a simple plan can all become part of the atmosphere of calm. Not because danger is being invited in, but because the future is being met with grace. There is something almost beautiful in the idea that safety begins long before an earthquake. In ordinary afternoons, in quiet rooms, in the peaceful logic of arranging life with care. Many people imagine safety as something dramatic, but often it is built from very small gestures. Knowing where to drop, cover, and hold on. Knowing which table is sturdy, knowing which walls are lined with bookshelves, and which windows might shatter. Knowing how to open a door calmly after shaking stops. Knowing where family members would meet if they were apart. These are not loud ideas. They are slow ideas, bedtime ideas almost, simple enough to rest beside the mind without stirring it too sharply. And perhaps that is why preparedness fits so naturally into a relaxing story like this one, because it allows knowledge to become a blanket rather than a burden. Even children in some places practice gentle earthquake drills, not to frighten them, but to teach their bodies a rhythm they can trust. Down low, protect the head and neck, stay where it is safer, wait for the shaking to stop. The body learns, the mind remembers. Calm becomes easier because calm has been rehearsed. There is a soothing wisdom in this, the same wisdom found in learning how to breathe more slowly, how to soften your shoulders, how to turn toward rest before sleep fully arrives. The world becomes more manageable when the body knows what to do. The same is true after an earthquake. Once the motion ends, the next step is not panic, but pause. Breathe, notice, listen. Are there broken objects nearby? Is the floor clear enough to step on safely? Is there a smell of gas, a sound of water where it should not be, a doorway blocked by fallen things? Has the room changed in any way that asks for slower movement? Safety is often found in this gentle pacing, this refusal to rush. Aftershocks may come, so it helps to stay aware, to move deliberately, to keep the mind wide and quiet rather than narrow and hurried. Outside, the same principle holds. If the ground has moved, then the world may need a few moments to show what else has changed. A branch may have fallen, a wall may be unstable, a road may be cracked, a hillside may be less secure than before. Thoughtful observation becomes its own shelter. And yet tonight, in this dark and peaceful room, none of that needs to feel urgent. It can simply feel wise. It can feel like the earth teaching patience and human beings learning to answer with patience of their own. There is also comfort in community. Neighbors checking on neighbors, families agreeing on a meeting point, people learning where local emergency information comes from. Schools, hospitals, and cities making plans before they are needed. All of this is part of the same quiet web of care. The earth may be ancient and restless, but human beings are not helpless upon it. We build, we learn, we listen, we practice, and in doing so, we create islands of steadiness on a moving world. So now, as this nighttime story continues to soften around you, you might imagine a home made just a little safer by loving hands, a hallway free of clutter, a shelf secured to the wall, a small light waiting patiently in the dark, a family that already knows what calm looks like if the ground should ever speak in waves. Let that image settle into your mind as something deeply restful. Preparedness as gentleness, safety as softness, knowledge as a quiet room arranged with care. And as you drift farther toward deep sleep, you can carry that feeling with you. The feeling that the world beneath you may move in its own ancient time. But here, in the human world of blankets and lamplight and sleeping houses, there are tender ways to meet that movement, tender ways to be ready, tender ways to rest. As this gentle bedtime story continues, and the night settles around you like a warm, quiet blanket, you can imagine the ground beneath towns, gardens, roads, and sleeping houses, not as one single kind of surface, but as many different layers, each with its own texture, weight, and memory. And one of the most soothing facts in earthquake science is that the way the ground responds to shaking depends very much on what it is made of. Some places rest on hard bedrock, old and firm, where seismic waves may pass through with a quicker, tighter motion. Other places lie above softer sediments, such as sand, silt, clay, or the loose materials left behind by ancient rivers, lakes, or coastlines. And in these softer places, the shaking can sometimes feel slower, larger, or more amplified, as though the surface is gently echoing the motion below. This does not mean the earth is becoming chaotic. It means the earth is behaving according to the quiet character of its materials. Sand responds one way, clay another, bedrock another still, and in some especially water-rich, loosely packed soils, a curious process called liquefaction can happen during strong shaking, where the grains in the ground are jostled so much that the soil temporarily loses some of its strength and behaves more like a thick fluid than a solid floor. It is a strange idea at first that ground can soften in this way, but when spoken slowly, it becomes another example of the planet's deep logic. If the grains are loose, if water fills the spaces between them, and if shaking changes the pressure enough, then the character of the ground can briefly shift. Streets may settle unevenly, buried pipes may move, and heavy objects may tilt, not because the laws of nature have been broken, but because they have been followed exactly. Scientists and engineers study these softer soils with great care, mapping where they are found, learning how they respond, and designing foundations that can better endure the ways the ground may move. In this, there is comfort. Even the more unusual behaviors of the earth can be understood, and what can be understood can often be prepared for. Some buildings are placed on deep foundations that reach stronger layers below. Some sites are improved before construction, with soils compacted or strengthened so that they respond more calmly if shaking ever comes. Some places are simply recognized as gentler choices for certain kinds of structures, because good planning is one of the quietest forms of wisdom. There's also something deeply sleepy in the thought that landscapes remember water long after the water itself has gone. A broad, flat valley may once have been a lake bed. A neighborhood may rest on old river sediments laid down grain by grain over thousands of years. A coastal plain may hold the quiet signature of ancient shorelines beneath its roads and homes. The present surface often looks settled and finished, but below it lie older stories, soft layers, and buried histories that still matter when the ground begins to move. This is why earthquake science is never only about the fault. It is also about the place above the fault, about what lies near the surface, about the hidden makeup of the land that shapes how shaking is felt. And because this is a relaxing story designed to help you fall asleep, the practical lesson can remain simple and kind. If you live in an earthquake-prone area, learning a little about your local ground conditions can be quietly reassuring. It can explain why engineers choose certain designs, why some neighborhoods are mapped differently than others, and why preparation is about more than the earthquake alone. It is about the conversation between waves and place. Indoors, the calm habits remain familiar and steady. Secure heavy furniture, keep pathways clear, know the safer spots in each room, and after shaking, move with patience and awareness rather than haste. Outside, too, the earth asks for thoughtful eyes. A place near a steep slope, a waterfront, or very soft ground may need a little extra attention after an earthquake, simply because the land itself may have changed mood for a while. Yet none of this needs to feel sharp tonight. You can let it feel spacious and slow, like listening to rain describe the roof above you. Imagine a sleeping town built across different layers of the earth, some firm, some soft, some old riverbeds hidden beneath streets and parks, some gravelly and stable, some finer and more delicate in their response. Imagine the waves from an earthquake arriving there, each neighborhood feeling the same event in its own way, not because one place is chosen and another ignored, but because the ground itself has many voices. And above all of that, imagine the quiet human work of understanding, mapping, studying, and preparing, turning geology into guidance and guidance into peace. Let that thought settle gently in your mind now. The earth is layered, the ground has character. Water once moved where roads now lie. Sand once settled where houses now sleep. And through all of it, science listens carefully enough to learn how the land may sway, soften, or hold firm as this nighttime story drifts onward. You do not need to keep every detail. You can simply rest in the larger feeling that even the softest ground follows patterns, even the strangest changes have causes, and even a moving planet can be met with calm knowledge and a very gentle kind of trust as you float a little deeper toward deep sleep, as this gentle bedtime story continues and the night grows softer, heavier, and more wonderfully still around you. You can imagine that not every movement of the earth arrives as a sudden shake or a clearly felt tremor, because some parts of our planet move in whispers, in motions so slow and delicate that people may never notice them at all without the patient help of science. Deep below certain fault zones, there are places where stress does not always release in one quick motion, but sometimes eases out over days or weeks in what researchers call slow slip events, a kind of silent earthquake that happens too gradually to send the usual strong seismic waves through the ground. It is a deeply calming thought that the earth has more than one rhythm, more than one way to release pressure, and that some of its adjustments happen almost like a long exhale in the dark. In these slow events, one side of a fault may creep past the other by a small amount, not with the quick snap that people often imagine, but with a gliding motion so patient it can only be tracked through careful measurements from instruments on the surface. Nearby, there may also be tiny signals called tremor, faint murmuring vibrations that do not feel like ordinary earthquakes, and that seem to accompany some of this deeper movement. Together, these quiet processes remind us that the earth is not simply storing tension and then releasing it in one dramatic language. It is speaking in many voices, some loud enough for people to feel, some so soft that only the most attentive systems can hear them at all. There is something strangely beautiful in that. The idea that the crust beneath continents and oceans has its own hidden murmurs, its own low and sleepy conversations carried on in darkness far below our beds, our streets, our gardens, and our sleeping cities. These deep and subtle motions often happen far beneath the locked sections of major faults, in warmer regions where the rock behaves differently under pressure and heat. Near the surface, faults may catch, resist, and then slip in ways that produce more familiar earthquakes, but deeper down, where temperature rises and the conditions change, the same great structures may move more softly, more gradually, almost as though the earth itself were shifting position in its sleep. Scientists study these quiet episodes with GPS stations, strain measurements, and long records of tiny vibrations, slowly piecing together how a fault can move in both silence and shaking, in whispers and waves. And as with so many relaxing facts about earthquakes, the comfort comes not from pretending the earth is still, but from understanding that its motion has form, pattern, and a kind of patient complexity. Some regions seem to experience these slow slip cycles repeatedly, as though the deep fault is breathing in long intervals, tightening and easing, over and over through the years. This does not turn the earth into a machine exactly, but it does make the planet feel lawful, almost musical in its deeper timing. Even where the surface seems calm and ordinary, the crust below may be engaged in motions too gradual for human senses, redistributing stress, adjusting ancient boundaries, and quietly shaping what may happen later. For a bedtime story, this is a particularly soothing truth, because it means the earth is not only a place of sudden releases, but also a place of softness, of gradualness, of hidden patience. The ground beneath your room may feel still, yet below that stillness lies a whole world of slow mechanics, deep warmth, friction, and release, unfolding at scales of time that ask nothing from you tonight except gentle wonder. And because soft facts are often most restful when paired with simple guidance, it helps to remember that whether an earthquake arrives in a region known for quick ruptures or one studied for slower fault behavior, everyday preparedness remains beautifully uncomplicated. Secure what could fall, know where to take cover, keep pathways clear, place small, useful things where sleepy hands could find them in the dark. A moving planet does not ask us to become tense. It asks us to become thoughtful. It asks us to live a little more gently with gravity, shelves, glass, doorways, and the quiet objects of ordinary life. So now, as this nighttime story continues to carry you toward deep sleep, picture a fault deep below the surface, not breaking sharply, but gliding almost imperceptibly, like silk being drawn across stone. Picture faint tremors murmuring through warm rock, where pressure is being eased in secret. Picture scientists noticing tiny shifts in the land above, recognizing that even silence can leave a trace when measured with enough patience. And picture yourself resting far above all of it, safe in the small, calm world of blanket, pillow, breath, and darkness, while the planet below continues its slow, invisible work. Let that image settle your thoughts. Let the idea of a whispering earth feel more soothing than strange. Let the facts become soft at the edges, like distant rain or fabric settling into place. And as you drift farther from wakefulness, you can rest inside the gentle knowledge that some earthquakes are not sharp at all, but long and quiet, hidden movements in the deep crust, where the earth releases its pressure with almost unimaginable patience, as though it too were trying not to disturb the night. As this gentle bedtime story continues, and the night settles into an even deeper hush, you can let your mind drift toward one of the quieter corners of earthquake science, the calm and careful way human beings have learned to measure the trembling of the earth, not to make it feel colder or more mechanical, but to understand it patience, clarity, and a kind of respectful wonder. When people speak about the size of an earthquake, they often use the word magnitude. And magnitude is a little like a whispered summary of how much energy was released when rock finally slipped below the surface. It does not describe every detail of the experience in every place, because one earthquake can feel gentle far away and stronger close by, soft on one kind of ground and more rolling on another. But magnitude gives scientists a steady way to compare earthquakes with one another, to place them along a scale of energy and motion. Long ago, one of the earlier systems people came to know was the Richter scale, which helped describe earthquake size using the height of seismic waves recorded on instruments. And although modern science often uses more refined methods today, the older name still lingers in everyday conversation, like an old lamp kept glowing in memory. In current practice, scientists often rely on moment magnitude, a measurement that takes into account the area of the fault that slipped, the amount of movement along it, and the strength of the rock involved, which means that the number is tied not only to the shaking that reached an instrument, but to the deeper physical event itself. There is something almost soothing in that idea, that the earth can be measured not by guesswork, but by listening closely to what actually moved in the dark. And one of the most gentle facts about magnitude is that it is logarithmic, which means the scale does not rise in simple steps like 1, 2, 3 footsteps across a room. Instead, each whole number increase reflects a much larger jump in wave amplitude and energy release. So an earthquake of magnitude 6 is not just a little larger than magnitude 5. It represents a far greater release of stored strain in the crust. Yet, tonight, you do not need to hold those numbers tightly in your mind. You can simply let them drift by as another example of how the earth follows patterns that science has learned to read with care. Then there is intensity, a different and equally restful concept once it is understood slowly. Magnitude tells us about the earthquake itself, but intensity describes what people actually experience in a particular location, how strongly the shaking is felt, what objects move, how buildings respond, and what changes are noticed in the landscape around them. In one town, the cups may gently rattle. In another, the lamps may sway more noticeably. In a third, farther away, no one may feel anything at all. The earthquake remains the same earthquake, but the experience changes with distance, depth, local ground conditions, and the kinds of structures resting above the moving earth. This makes intensity feel almost intimate, like the local accent of a much larger planetary event. It is the Earth's motion translated into the language of one street, one room, one hillside, one coast. Scientists gather these reports from instruments and from people, combining careful measurements with lived observations to build a fuller picture of how shaking traveled through a region. And perhaps that is one of the loveliest things about earthquake science, that it leaves room for both precision and experience, both numbers and human noticing. The instrument records the wave. The person recalls the sway of a hanging light, the shifting of a chair, the brief ripple through a sleeping house. Together, they help tell the story. Even the way magnitudes are reported carries a patient honesty. Early estimates may be revised as more data arrives, because science is willing to become more accurate over time. It listens again, recalculates, and refines. It does not hurry more than it has to. It prefers a truer answer to a rushed one. And this, too, can be calming as you lie in the dark. On a moving planet, there are people and systems devoted to understanding motion carefully rather than dramatically, steadily rather than noisily. For everyday life, the most comforting part remains simple. You do not need to memorize scales in order to be safe. You do not need to calculate energy in the moment. What matters most in a practical sense is still beautifully clear. Know your safer spots, practice calm actions, protect your head and neck, and move thoughtfully after shaking stops. The numbers belong to science, and science will keep watch over them. You can simply rest in the larger truth that the trembling earth has become more knowable through patient measurement. So now, as this nighttime story softens toward deeper sleep, picture a quiet seismic station somewhere in the dark, recording the Earth's motions as thin lines and hidden calculations. Picture scientists turning those motions into magnitudes, intensities, maps, and understanding. Picture the planet below as something immense, but not unknowable, powerful, but still readable in patterns and numbers. And let that thought be strangely comforting, that even when the Earth moves, it leaves behind a trace that can be gently measured, carefully named, and folded into our growing knowledge of this ancient, patient world. While you drift onward into rest, as this gentle bedtime story continues, and the night drifts farther into stillness, you can imagine that every landscape around you, every hill, valley, plain, and quiet street, is resting on stone that has kept a memory far longer than any human mind could hold. Because rocks remember pressure, faults remember movement, and the earth itself carries an old and patient record of where it has bent, lifted, cracked, and settled through the ages. In this relaxing story, we can think of earthquake science not only as the study of sudden shaking, but as the study of memory written into the land. A cliff face may hold layers that were once flat and are now folded like blankets, gently pressed from the side. A dry valley may follow the trace of an ancient fault where the crust shifted long ago and then rested again. A river may bend around uplifted ground, its path quietly altered by motions too slow for the eye to see in real time. Even a line of low hills or a broad basin can be part of a much older geologic sentence, left behind by repeated earthquakes, gradual uplift, or the soft settling of broken rock into a new arrangement. Scientists read these signs with extraordinary patience. They look at offset stream channels where water once flowed straight and now bends because the ground moved beneath it. They study terraces, ridges, scarps, and buried layers of sediment to understand how often a fault has slipped and how the surface changed after each event. In some places, a fault scarp rises like a long, shallow step across the land, subtle enough that a person might walk across it without noticing. And yet, it may be the visible edge of a past earthquake, preserved in quiet earth for centuries or longer. There's something deeply calming in that image, that the land itself can hold the memory of motion so gently. The earth does not forget where it has moved. It leaves traces in hillsides, in gravel fans, in old lake beds, in the shape of the coast, and in the arrangement of stone below the roots of trees and the foundations of homes. These traces do not rush. They wait. They remain until someone comes with careful eyes and patient questions. This is part of what makes geology feel so perfectly suited to a bedtime story, because it asks us to slow down enough to notice what would otherwise remain hidden: a folded layer of rock, a broken ridge, a shifted fence line, a road that needed repair where the ground crept almost invisibly over time. All of these are soft clues that the earth is alive in its own ancient way. Even the most familiar places may be carrying deeper stories. A quiet farming valley may rest within an old basin formed by crustal stretching. A peaceful coastal plain may have been lifted little by little by repeated earthquakes over many thousands of years. A mountain meadow may sit above buried faults that helped shape the ridges around it long before anyone gave them names. And because this is a sleep story meant to help you fall asleep, you do not need to hold all of these facts sharply in your mind. You can let them move through you like moonlight across stone. You can simply feel the larger truth that landscapes are not accidental. They are written slowly by pressure, gravity, water, and time. Earthquakes are one pen among many, sometimes writing in a quick line, sometimes helping shape a surface that wind and rain will later soften. There is also a gentle safety lesson hidden in this chapter of the land. When people understand the memory of a place, they can make wiser choices upon it. They can notice where old faults run, where slopes may be less stable, where sediments may shake more strongly, and where certain kinds of building or planning deserve extra care. In this way, learning the land's long memory becomes an act of present-day peace. A mapped fault is not a cause for alarm. It is a kindness from the past, a reminder that the ground has spoken here before and may one day speak again. To know that is not to live tensely. It is to live wisely, with shelves secured, plans practiced, homes strengthened where possible, and a respectful calm toward the place one inhabits. So now, as this gentle nighttime story continues to soften, and your thoughts loosen more and more, imagine an old landscape under starlight, a quiet valley with a river moving through it, low hills beyond, and deeper still, the buried traces of long-ago earthquakes sleeping in the earth below. Imagine rocks folded by pressures that took millions of years to unfold into visible beauty. Imagine a fault line resting now in silence, its previous motions recorded in offset layers and subtle rises in the land. Imagine the whole earth as a memory keeper, not a restless thing without pattern, but a patient archive of motion and rest, strain and release, shifting and settling. And above all of that ancient remembering, imagine yourself safe in the present moment, lying still, breathing slowly, wrapped in darkness and softness, while the old stones below continue to hold their quiet stories without asking anything from you tonight except gentle wonder, a slower breath, and permission to drift a little deeper into sleep as this gentle bedtime story continues and the night settles more deeply around you. You can imagine that somewhere beyond the sleeping houses and dark windows of the world, there are calm rooms where people study the earth, not in panic, but in patience, laying out maps, tracing fault lines, measuring old motions, and slowly building a softer understanding of where the ground is more likely to move, and how communities can live more gently with that knowledge. One of the most comforting facts about earthquakes is that while no one can make the planet stop shifting, human beings have become very good at learning where shaking is more likely, what kinds of ground may respond more strongly, and how certain places can be made safer through thoughtful planning. This is the quiet purpose of seismic hazard maps, those careful pictures that do not claim to know the exact hour or day when an earthquake will arrive, but instead show the long patterns of possibility shaped by faults, past events, soil conditions, and the deep structure of the crust itself. A hazard map is not a prophecy. It is more like a weathered lantern, casting enough light to help people see the shape of the path ahead. In some regions, the likelihood of stronger shaking is higher because active plate boundaries lie nearby, or because faults have moved repeatedly through historical time and far beyond it. In other places, the risk is lower, though rarely absent, because old faults may still remain hidden in the rock, carrying long memories from earlier chapters of the earth. These maps gather the patient wisdom of geology, seismology, engineering, and time, and they turn that wisdom into something deeply practical. Builders may use them to choose stronger designs. Cities may use them to guide codes and retrofits. Families may use them to understand their surroundings a little better, and all of this can feel surprisingly restful because it reminds us that knowledge is one of the gentlest forms of shelter. Some earthquake facts are about moments, about waves arriving and buildings swaying and objects needing to be secured. But hazard maps are about the longer view, the soft mathematics of chance spread across years and decades. They ask not, will the earth move tonight? But rather, how has it moved here before? How might it move again? And what kind of care would be wise in this place? There is something beautifully humble in that approach. It does not demand certainty where certainty cannot yet be given. Instead, it offers guidance, preparedness, and a calm respect for the planet's older rhythms. Scientists estimate these patterns by combining many kinds of clues. They look at known faults, at the sizes of past earthquakes, at the intervals between older events where those can be traced, and at the way seismic waves may be shaped by local ground conditions. The result is not a simple yes or no, but a layered understanding, a sense of how the Earth's deep behavior may touch the surface over time. This is why two homes that look similar may still belong to different stories of risk, if one rests on firmer ground or farther from a major fault than the other. It is why a region may update its building rules over the years, not because the earth has suddenly changed character, but because people have learned to listen more carefully. And that, too, is soothing. To learn is to become steadier. To update is to grow wiser. To prepare is to answer the moving earth with grace rather than fear. Even the language of recurrence, the idea that some faults seem to produce larger earthquakes over long average intervals, can be held gently tonight. These are not clocks wound tightly in the dark. They are broad patterns in the memory of the land, approximate rhythms shaped by stress, rock, friction, and time. A fault may wait longer than expected. Another may move sooner. The earth is lawful, but not mechanical in the simple sense. It does not turn itself into a schedule for human convenience. Still, the broader patterns matter, and they help guide the quiet acts of planning that make homes, schools, bridges, and hospitals more resilient. So as this relaxing story drifts onward, you might picture a map spread across a table in a quiet room, shaded with gentle colors, lines tracing faults through mountains, valleys, and coastlines, soft symbols marking zones where the land may shake more strongly, or where soils may amplify motion. Around that map sit people thinking carefully, not dramatically, deciding how to build with more care, where to strengthen older walls, how to prepare communities, and how to turn science into something useful and kind. Then let that image widen. See whole neighborhoods sleeping peacefully above their hidden geology. See roads, schools, parks, apartment buildings, and sleeping rooms like yours, all resting on land that has been studied with patience, and feel the deep comfort in knowing that understanding the earth does not remove mystery, but it does make mystery gentler. It gives it edges, contours, and names. It transforms uncertainty into wiser choices. It allows the moving planet and the resting human world to meet each other more softly. So now, as your thoughts become more distant and your breathing grows slower still, let those quiet maps fade into the background like moonlit coastlines seen from far away. Let the colors blur. Let the lines soften. Let the knowledge remain, even as the details drift from view. The earth can be studied, risk can be reduced, places can be understood, and rest is still possible on a planet that moves in ancient, patient ways. Hold only that feeling now, and let it carry you onward toward deeper sleep as this gentle bedtime story continues and the night grows even deeper. You can imagine the earth not in the hurried scale of clocks and calendars, but in the wide and patient rhythm of deep time, where mountains rise grain by grain, oceans open and close across ages, and earthquakes become only one small expression of a planet that has been quietly shaping itself for billions of years. In that longer view, the ground beneath you feels less like a fixed stage and more like a great slow-moving tapestry, woven from heat below, cooling crust above, drifting plates, folded rocks, and ancient faults that have spent lifetimes storing and releasing pressure in their own steady language. Human beings often think in days, in seasons, in years, but the earth thinks in much slower chapters. And there is something profoundly relaxing in allowing your mind to drift into that slower pace tonight. A fault may wait centuries between larger movements, and even then, that wait is only a brief pause in the life of the crust. A mountain belt may rise over tens of millions of years, while wind, rain, rivers, and ice patiently soften its edges at the same time. A seabed may spread by only a few centimeters in a year, yet over immense spans, it can widen whole oceans. These are not hurried processes. They are the soft mechanics of a living planet, so gradual that they make human worries feel, for a moment, a little lighter and a little smaller. Earthquakes belong to that same deep rhythm. They are not separate from the story of Earth's making. They are part of how the crust adjusts, how stress is released, how landscapes are slowly written and rewritten. A valley may owe its shape to old faulting. A ridge may stand where rocks were compressed long ago. A coastline may have been lifted, little by little, by repeated earthquakes too far apart for any one person to witness as a sequence. Yet the land remembers, and science listens. And from those patient records, we learn that the world is not static, only slow. This is one of the most soothing earthquake facts of all. The planet beneath your bed is active, yes, but not frantic. It moves with laws, with structure, with timing shaped by heat, gravity, friction, and stone. Even what feels sudden to us is often the release of pressure gathered over centuries. Tonight, as you lie still and allow this relaxing story to carry you onward, you might picture the crust as a set of vast sleeping rafts drifting over deeper layers, colliding here, parting there, brushing past one another in motions so slow they seem almost imaginary. You might imagine ancient supercontinents assembling and breaking apart, not as dramatic events, but as long, graceful rearrangements in the dark. You might imagine fault lines resting beneath quiet towns, beneath forests, beneath deserts and coastlines, holding stories that began long before the first road, the first house, the first human voice. And through it all, the earth remains patient. That patience can become your own. The slower you imagine the planet moving, the slower your thoughts may move too. The farther back in time you picture the crust forming and folding and shifting, the less urgent the present moment may feel. This is not because your life is unimportant, but because the earth offers perspective, and perspective can be deeply restful. Even preparedness takes on a softer tone when placed inside deep time, a secured shelf, a practiced response, a flashlight by the bed, a plan shared with loved ones. All of these become small but meaningful ways of living wisely on an old and gently moving world. They do not need to carry fear. They can carry respect. They can be part of an ordinary, tender human life unfolding on a planet that has always been changing and will go on changing long after tonight's darkness fades into morning. In that way, this sleep story, this bedtime story, this calm nighttime story about earthquakes becomes something larger than shaking alone. It becomes a story about belonging to Earth, about resting on ancient crust, about breathing quietly above a planet that turns, cools, shifts, and renews itself with extraordinary patience. Let that idea settle into you now. Beneath your room are floors, foundations, soil, rock, deeper rock, warmer layers still. And below all of that, an inheritance of time, so vast it cannot be hurried. Above you are blankets, darkness, perhaps the faint hush of a distant street, or the quiet shape of the ceiling fading from attention. Between those two worlds, the deep earth below and the soft, sleeping room above. You are held in a very small and peaceful present moment, and perhaps that is enough for now. You do not need to solve the planet tonight. You do not need to memorize every wave, fault, or plate boundary. You can simply rest inside the calm truth that the earth moves slowly, lawfully, and beautifully across ages, and that even earthquakes, when understood gently, become part of a grander, quieter story, one that invites the mind to loosen, the breath to lengthen, and the body to drift a little farther into deep sleep. Now, as this final chapter of our gentle bedtime story begins, the night feels deeper than it did at the start, softer somehow, as though the hours themselves have lowered their voices. And we can let this last part move in the same slow, comforting cadence as your sample's sleepy welcome, easing not toward more ideas, but toward rest. Beneath you, the earth remains what it has always been, ancient, layered, patient, carrying its tectonic plates in their long, invisible drift, holding old faults in quiet stone, sending occasional waves through rock when pressure asks to be released. And yet none of that needs to feel sharp or urgent now. Tonight it can simply feel vast, vast and lawful, vast and slow, vast enough to hold mountains, valleys, oceans, seafloors, cities, forests, and sleeping rooms all at once. You have traveled gently through this relaxing story, through plates and waves, and deep faults, and aftershocks and safety facts, through soft soils and quiet instruments, and the long memory written into old stone. And now all of those facts can begin to blur at the edges, not disappearing, only softening, becoming less like information and more like atmosphere. You do not need to remember each term. You do not need to keep hold of each image. You can let them drift past like dim lanterns over dark water. A tectonic plate moving as slowly as fingernails grow, a fault resting deep below a quiet town, a seismic wave passing through rock in a patient sequence, a building designed to sway a little and remain standing, a shelf secured to a wall, a flashlight near the bed, a coastline with a practiced path to higher ground, a scientist listening to the earth through a silent instrument in the dark. All of it can settle now into one simple feeling, which is that this planet is moving, yes, but not meaninglessly, not chaotically, not outside the reach of understanding. It moves in patterns. It moves in rhythms. It moves in deep time. And above that moving earth, people learn, prepare, listen, build, map, measure, and rest. Perhaps that is one of the most calming facts of all, that life on earth has always unfolded on a world that shifts. And still there are homes and blankets and quiet rooms and moments like this one, where a body can sink down into support and a mind can loosen its grip on the day. So now, let everything become simpler. Let the science grow lighter. Let the words stretch out and thin like clouds in the last moments before sleep. Imagine the crust below as a great sleeping mosaic of stone, each plate gliding with impossible patience, each boundary holding stories too old for clocks. Imagine the deeper layers below that, warmer and slower, carrying heat upward through the ages. Imagine the mountains resting in darkness, the ocean floor lying still beneath miles of calm black water, the faults quiet for now, The instruments listening, the cities sleeping, the windows dim, the roads emptying, the world exhaling. And in the middle of all this, imagine nothing is required from you. Not effort, not memory, not analysis. This sleep story has done its work. This bedtime story can now become only a murmur at the edge of awareness. If a thought rises, let it rise and fade. If a fact returns, let it return softly and then drift away. If the mind wants to keep watch a little longer, let it do so gently, because even wakefulness can become quiet when it stops trying so hard. Breathe in slowly and feel the air arrive without effort. Breathe out even more slowly and feel the body grow heavier, calmer, warmer. Let your jaw soften. Let your forehead smooth. Let your shoulders sink. Let your hands rest without purpose. Let your legs be still. Let the bed hold what you no longer need to carry. And while you rest there, the earth continues far below in its own patient way, storing and releasing pressure, lifting and settling, drifting and reshaping itself over ages too large to disturb this moment. Tonight, that ancient motion does not have to wake the mind. It can lull it. It can become a reminder that everything meaningful does not need to happen quickly. Some things take centuries, some take millennia, some take only one slow breath in a dark room to begin. So let this nighttime story become quieter now, quieter than the rooms beyond your door, quieter than distant traffic, quieter than wind against glass, quieter even than thought. Let the phrases soften into rhythm, plates drifting, waves fading, old stones remembering, safe rooms waiting, gentle bedtime, calming narration, deep sleep. And now even those words can begin to loosen, their edges dissolving into darkness. There is nothing to solve, nothing to predict, nothing to hold upright any longer. Only the soft fact of being here, on a moving planet, in a still room, in a body that knows how to rest when given permission. So let yourself fall asleep if sleep is near. Let yourself float if floating is what comes first. Let the earth keep its ancient watch below, and let the night keep its tender watch above. The story is ending now in the gentlest way, not with a sharp goodbye, but with a fading, with a quieting, with a long, soft hush, until all that remains is darkness, breath, warmth, and the slow, steady comfort of a world turning beneath the stars.